If I was to say to you that what you focus on, your thoughts, your feelings create your results, you would think I'm talking about law of attraction and other woo-woo stuff. Well, the fact is now neuroscience is starting to say the same thing. There's solid research coming out showing that where you focus shifts the way your brain works through something called predictive coding and actually makes it more likely that you're going to get those results. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Hi, I'm Ravi Tangri, and this is Soul Engineering Your Life and Your Work. If I was to ask you, where do you spend most of your attention, or where's the default attention when you're in a new situation? Is it on all the things that are good, or is it on all the things that are bad or not quite what you expected or not what you wanted? Where do you spend your time? And it takes some brutal honesty to deal with this. And some may say I'm thinking about what's the difference between optimism and pessimism. Well, here's the reality is nobody says that they're a pessimist. What they tend to do is say, I'm a realist. You're either an optimist or a realist. The realists are the pessimists in hiding. And this is not about sticking your head in the sand and not seeing the negative. You do need to deal with those things. But where do you spend most of your time? Where does your attention go first? What I've found is that for more people than the other alternative, the tendency is to focus on the negative, on what's wrong, on what's bad, to focus on all the things that did not work out well. That seems to be the default. Even for people who say that they're positive, you'll find that they get irritated about things that aren't right, or focus there. Listen to the conversations, not to what they say about them. This is something I did for many years, and it's something that's learned through family and so on, that there are habits that you learn, and it's totally below the level of consciousness, but you can change it once you're aware of it. And what happened when I was in that without knowing that I found people that were like me, that also focused on the negative because it was what I was used to. Now, here's the funny thing is there are times when that irritated me. And what that was really about was the mirror principle. And there's another episode, I'll put the link in the notes, where I talk about that, where what was really going on is they were reflecting what I was doing and I didn't like what I saw. It wasn't about them. They were showing me what I was doing. And once I realized that I had this pattern, I worked diligently to shift it, and it did slowly shift. And I went from doing these things and focusing on the negative and being surrounded by a lot of people who were focused on the negative and sometimes being irritated, to some time ago, I was in a relationship, and the person that I was in the relationship with, she was very much focused on negativity. And, for example, we both love coffee. We're both coffee snobs. We love good coffee. But whenever we went out, it was inevitable that if we weren't making a coffee, there was a litany of complaints that would pop up. And now, if coffee's bad, I'll say it. If it's so-so, I won't say anything to let it go. But that was the first thing. Or it wasn't hot enough, or there was too much milk. Or the one thing that still makes me chuckle is she would say that the milk, the froth in the latte or the cappuccino wasn't texturized enough. I haven't heard anybody before or since ever complain about how texturized the milk is in their latte or cappuccino, but it was a routine thing. Now, I'm not saying this to judge. I'm just observing, and I wasn't judging. This was someone who had a beautiful soul, And I held space for that negativity. And there were times, lots of times when, the beauty and positivity came out, and I just held space for when she was. And I noticed that I wasn't reacting. It wasn't irritating me. But the other thing I did notice when the relationship ended, that when I let go of holding that space, I suddenly felt this huge exhaustion, that as much as I wasn't taking it on or reacting, just holding space over that long time for that negativity was still tiring. Since then, I've noticed a shift that I can hold space more for others without it exhausting me. So I'm seeing these shifts, and I'm working, it's progress bit by bit by bit. Now, the thing here is, what tends to happen is, as you focus on the negativity and all the things going wrong and things that do not work for you, you expect things not to work for you. And if you practice or believe in the law of attraction, this is using it to the wrong effect. This is putting out all the things you don't like so you attract it. But this is not just the woo-woo stuff. Neuroscience is now catching up with this. And there are several papers. There are two new ones published just last year that talk about the predictive coding system of the brain. And what they're finding is that if you focus on negative thoughts, if you expect negative outcomes, you're much more likely to get those negative outcomes. And this predictive coding process that happens in your brain, that what happens first is, because you're expecting things not to work out, with bad things to happen, your perception shifts. So your brain looks for proof that you're right, that this is going to screw up, this is going to mess up for you. When that happens, your physiology starts to shift. Your body prepares for the negative outcome. It's like you're bracing for it, and you're into the stress response. And, this chronic stress, living in anticipation of negativity, is just not healthy. And what happens as your body shifts, then your behavior starts to shift. So when you have opportunities, you may hesitate, you may hold back, you may play small, or you may react irritated and have negative reactions from people because you're edgy or irritated or upset. And then the world responds to your behavior. And guess what? You get what you feared. This is the predictive coding process. And there's also research starting to come out now that if you focus on positive outcomes, not just for yourself, but also as leaders, if in terms of believing in positive outcomes in your people, you're more likely to get those outcomes as well. But it's a matter of taking back control of your mind and taking it from the default into shifting into a much more conscious process. So how do you change? Well, the first step is to notice. Notice yourself. Notice the people around you. Notice what irritates you. Where do you put your attention? This is, as I say, where it takes brutal honesty. There's a lot of people I know who profess to be very positive, happy, up, and they post all these wonderful, happy things on Facebook and Instagram. But in day-to-day life, they tend to keep focusing on the things that are negative. So, really give yourself some brutal honesty. And now here's the thing where most people go down the absolute wrong rabbit hole, is they beat themselves up because they go, oh my God, I'm so negative. And guess what? If you do that, you're being negative about being negative. You're into a downward spiral, and you're just reinforcing that negative to beat yourself up again. You're right back into that pattern. So that is not what you want to do. If you notice, and to me, I'm very much like a scientist. When I see that behavior in me, when I saw that negativity, when I see it still pop up at times, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm very much like a dispassionate scientist observing this. And I go, okay. And one thing you can do is really celebrate that you've noticed it. Oh my gosh, I caught myself. Now you may catch yourself after it's happened, but over time you'll start noticing it earlier and earlier, and just allow yourself to take a nice gentle breath, be present, go, oh, okay. And even celebrate that I caught myself. Hey, yeah, I can see this. That's a huge step, noticing. Even if it's already happened, you'll start noticing earlier as you practice this. And then there's a few things that you can do. You can start to change your internal dialogue, or what's called your priors, where instead of expecting the total negativity, like saying to yourself, oh, things always go wrong. This is going to mess up. I'm not going to be good enough. They're going to reject me, whatever. Change it to something not positive, but you know what? Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes they don't. Shift the expectation. Start to shift that perception. And when you catch yourself thinking those thoughts, oh, this is going to go wrong. It always does. Wait a minute. Sometimes it does go wrong. Sometimes it doesn't. Let's go back based on history. And I'm not asking you to expect, butterflies and rainbows and unicorns. Don't expect perfection, but expect something slightly better. Shift slightly. Let's bring that realistic lens in. What is slightly better? Not just total rejection. That it maybe, they won't buy your whole idea in the meeting, but maybe that you can get them to at least consider it. That's something a little better, where there's some consideration, not an outright rejection. Find something that you can think based on history that you could get to. Okay, don't try to change it all and transform it. Another thing you can do is break down what you're doing into smaller actions that have a better chance of going well. So if you get some successes, it starts to break that prediction loop. Your brain doesn't have that pattern, and you start building a pattern of moving forward. Think about if you're driving down a dirt road and there's a rut in the road and you're in the rut. It takes a huge amount of effort to get yourself out of the rut, and it can be very easy to slip back in. But if you just slowly shift slightly and look for those opportunities, you find places where the rut's not as deep and you can pull out. So find these things where you can change your internal dialogue, the expectations, expect something slightly better. Don't go for the, unicorns and rainbows ultimate, and then break things down into actions that can give you a much better chance of actually succeeding. So these are some simple steps you can start to move forward. What you may find, as with a lot of things we discuss, is that sometimes the roots of this negativity go very deep, and you may need, as I have had in the past, some counseling or coaching support to help you break free of those patterns. That's where those priors come from. A lot of this stuff comes from childhood and is locked in there. And for most of us, we need support at some point to get free of that. So let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear in the comments. I would love to hear in the feedback for this, or send me an email. I would love to hear what you're finding and what progress you find you can make. How do you notice the negativity or positivity, and what happens to your results as you start to shift this? I'm Ravi Tangri. This is Soul Engineering Your Life and Work, and I will see you next week. Bye. I got the energy, it's all I need to feel.